Today's guest is Lin Randle. She's the Senior Director of Continuous Improvement at Mitsubishi Electric USA. All right, Lin, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for asking.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm excited to learn about your background. I learned a little bit about elevators, but there's so much more, I think. And I'm curious to learn about, working on the contractor or the smaller business side, and now working for you to work for Mitsubishi, and your different learnings along the way.
Well, they're certainly different between, right, working for a family-owned business, a small independent elevator contractor, and then moving into not just a corporate world, but a multinational, international world. Yeah, it can have some challenges, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. How'd you get into the industry?
Into the elevator industry? It's pretty interesting. My father was a fighter pilot. He was born in Long Beach, California, and the Korean War was going on, and to avoid getting drafted into the army, he joined the Air Force, and so circuitously, when he retired from the Air Force, he was a fighter pilot, flew for years in Korea and Vietnam. He couldn't find a job flying planes. And so when he came home, one of his childhood friends was an elevator mechanic. And he said, "Hey, they're always looking for salespeople." And that's how he ended up in the elevator industry. And there you have it, because he was in, and like a lot of people in the elevator industry, it's a lot of family. So he brought us all up into it. But I come from a large family of seven. And while we all had that summer gig, filing or doing whatever, I was the only one that actually worked for him for as long as I did. None of the other ones really took it on as a profession.
Yeah, so as a family business, uh, I guess he started off by learning from others, and then at some point he broke off and started his own.
Oh, well, it's that's even a funnier story. No, he was a salesperson. The company in Los Angeles, or Long Beach actually, purchased a company up in San Francisco, and they sent him up there and then decided they didn't want it. It was too far away. They didn't feel like managing it. And this is, a young man with a huge family who just relocated up to Northern California. He just said, "Hey, how about I take it over?" And they actually gave him the company because, one, it was far away. San Francisco and Los Angeles, that's a good 10 hours, right, by car, or 8. But two, it was near bankruptcy when they acquired it, because they were in the middle of some pretty large installations. They manufactured elevators, and they were installing them at the local San Francisco State University and their BART. It's called BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, and they had
Oh,
two huge installs going. They were nearly bankrupt, and so I think it's probably a godsend when my dad said, "Hey, well, I ain't moving back down to Los Angeles. What are you going to do with the company?" And they literally gave him the company in 1974, I think it was.
yeah. Given the company, obviously there's, like you said, risk attached to it. So, um, was it an easy decision? What were the initial steps? Because it was on the edge.
Yeah, boy. So for him, um, as a child at the time, I was just a little kid, and it was the first time I'd ever taken a ride on an elevator car top was at that business in downtown San Francisco. They manufactured elevators right there in San Francisco. I mean, this is like now, if you go to where that building sits, it's a pretty trendy area, and I think it's been turned into condos or whatever. But it was a tough decision. So he did a couple of things. He let go. He stopped manufacturing, so he got out of. There were three unions within that one shop, iron workers, some type of manufacturing, something or other, and then the elevator union. So he stopped construction, stopped manufacturing, um, tried to finish those two projects with the university and the rapid transit. And he actually got out of construction. So it was interesting to work for him as long as I did, and then transition to Mitsubishi where I am now, because they are in construction, right? You build elevators, you want to install them. So that's their primary, not primary, but it's a huge revenue stream, right? So it was interesting to transition between the two.
Yeah, for sure. And sort of what led to the transition?
My dad died.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I laugh about it now, but it certainly it was a happened suddenly, and it was a family-owned business, and like many businesses, in spite of having a really good plan in place, no good deed goes unpunished. I think is how the saying goes, because as the only child working for the family business, there was a lot of tension, I'll say, and misunderstandings. And so within a few months, I was out of a job. So that's how that happened.
yeah. And how did you find Mitsubishi?
Um, my career with the family business, I became very active in the local elevator industry, the national association of elevator contractors. In fact, I landed as president when I was young. I was the first woman and the youngest president ever elected to that association, which is a very old. I think they're celebrating their 75th year. So through that network of belonging to these local and national associations, I met people, and when I decided to go back into the industry, because I took a little break trying to deal with the family and the personal issues of all of that. Um, it was someone who said, "You need to check out Mitsubishi Electric." And I didn't even know that they made elevators, yet they make a fantastic product. They are the world's only provider of spiral escalators. And it's just, there's a whole bunch of interesting connections in my childhood with Mitsubishi's product. So it was really interesting that I landed there. But that's how it happened. It was a connection within the industry who said, "You need to check out this company," that I had not even, they were not on my radar at all.
Yeah, and it looked like you got pulled into like logistical operational roles. I mean, was that something you were targeting, or just you did a lot of that through your, your sort of family's business? Like, did you choose that, or you just kind of fell into that?
Uh, it, 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 I fell into it. And here's the thing about a family owned business or even a small business. Let's say you're an entrepreneur and it's your startup. You have to have a bias for action. You have to be able to roll up your sleeves and do whatever comes your way, whether it's offloading some truck that just showed up and you've got no forklift and no one in the shop to help you figure out how you're going to offload this material, to dealing with a customer who's called and is upset about something. You have to do everything. So that entrepreneurial sort of spirit of can do, will do, must do, that's how it translates well into a large organization that can find itself sometimes stuck. And so what happened was I was actually hired as a contracts manager, um, living in San Diego, and our corporate office is about 100 miles north of me. But I'm in San Diego, close to the Mexican border, and we have a factory just across the border. And something had happened, and they needed some type of support. And boom, I'm doing contracts, and then I started running logistics. All of the product coming from that factory would come through San Diego, and so it was a sort of a fortuitous opportunity, but I think it was the family-owned business and that sort of can-do attitude that was something like that comes up, and I was like, "Hey, I'm down here. I got it. I can take over for you."
Yeah.
So,
No, that's very cool. And I noticed you have a lot of background in training and develop and stuff. Like, what did you learn? Like, because always interested in that because we're always trying to work with our contractors better and train them and stuff like that. So, like, walk me through some of the things that was in place, or some of the things you sort of put in place in terms of training and development for the business or the contractors you support.
again, it started with the family-owned business. I remember looking for an admin person. And during the course of the interview, she was asking me, and this is in the 90s, she was asking me, so how do you gauge performance? How do this sort of thing, right? And I was like, what is she talking about? And she goes, you mean you don't do performance reviews? And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? And so it was that conversation that led me to understand, okay, wait, you should have policies and procedures in place and establish certain expectations so that employees know what you want of them, and then that's how you do a performance review or whatever. So it started way back then, documenting processes. And also back then is when IIPPs became a must have. Having a hazardous communication plan was a must have if you're going to bid projects. And that was, like I say, 80s 90s or something like that. So when I came to Mitsubishi and I was hired to do contracts, a very small, narrow scope of work, right? Because I interviewed for a position as a PM on a really large construction job, or that they were interviewing me to take that on. And I was like, that does not sound like fun at all, right? A PM on a construction project. Um, and something came up, and the topic of contracts came up, and that's how I landed in contracts. But and again, because of a can-do attitude, when you own your own business and someone sends you a contract, you have no problem reading it, marking it up, and sending it back. It's like, man, I'm not going to accept these terms. So anyway, that's how that job came up. Um, and it was, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And then corporate social responsibility, environmental sustainability as an elevator company. Like, how do you even approach that? I mean, we're passionate about that. We're trying to figure out how to do things better. Like, what was under your portfolio? How do you think about that? Where's improvement there?
I for me, the improvement that came on, so standing up a training and development department was natural. It was something I had done for my own business, and I could see the value in doing that on for Mitsubishi. And it started again with contracts. But during that period of time, we had a Mitsubishi has a foundation, Mitsubishi Electric America Foundation, and they were holding their annual conference in San Diego. And I had been with the company a couple of years, but hadn't really heard about the foundation and their good works until this guy came to town, and I was supposed to show him around, and he was just talking about the things that they did, and I just said, this is ridiculous. More people need to know what it is that you do. And I became like the de facto cheerleader sort of champion, because I just, corporate social responsibility, and you may know this, having worked with Japanese companies, in Japan is not something that's clearly understood, because it's something that is just simply done. So why do you need to have a foundation set up for these things? Because in Japan they're already helping each other, and so I think somehow there was a disconnect in the communication about what our foundation did. So that's how I ended up being that too. The senior director of CSR and environmental sustainability is just because I was a champion for the good works that we did, and I wanted everybody to know about it. And so there you have it.
Very cool. No, I love it. Because you know how sometimes, people think everything is very formal, but like you said, you just come at it with, there's a need, I see a need, I want to do something, and you just kind of make
Yeah.
things happen. So I guess kind of led to your sort of role now. I see continuous improvement.
Yes. So this one's new for me. It's about 3 years that I've been doing this, and so a lifetime of elevators uh, got left behind for this thing called lean. And we have quite a number of businesses in America, and a number of them already deploy lean. Um, but our particular unit, uh, you know, was unfamiliar with it until we saw some activities with our other business units, and their results were pretty darn good with this thing called lean. So we decided to deploy lean a couple of years ago. And when I heard about it, I thought, what the heck is that? So I did my due diligence and did some research, and the idea that it's just founded on, continuous improvement through respect for people. I was like, man, this is my jam. How do I get some of it? And the man who hired me originally some 20 years ago in the elevator business, he had moved on to become president of Mitsubishi Electric, the first American president, and he's the one who decided to launch lean. And so he called on me and he said, hey, Lynn, I'm doing this thing. And I said, yeah, I know, I heard, what's up? And so he said, you want to come on over and work for me? So that's how I left a life of elevators to go do this thing called continuous improvement. But it's interesting because I apply most of the lean activities and principles to the activities of the elevator division, because lean, as applied to construction, man, it's amazing. It's visible. It's real. You can see the results. So
Yeah,
that's
I
how
mean,
I
what
ended up
for
here.
for people that are not familiar with lean at all, what are the steps to get this off the ground? Like, where do you go? What do you need to put in place? Who do you need to talk to?
Well, there's a number of resources online. This is how I met the amazing Jesse Hernandez and Jennifer Lacey and Sam Moore. A bunch of the folks on our emotional bungee jumper sessions are lean people, and so it's that's how I found it. Lean Enterprise Institute, Lean Construction Institute, Association of Manufacturing Excellence. There's just so many resources out there, but to get it off the ground, you have got to have commitment
Mm,
from the top.
got it.
The
And what
people all along.
Yeah. And when I say commitment, what does that mean when you have that leadership commitment? How do you know if someone's committed and they're all in on it? Is it the budget? Is the attitude? Are they involved? Like what do you need to get?
I don't think that a budget is an issue at all. Lean is, I mean, starting with 5S is like the most inexpensive means of getting things in order. I think it's a commitment in the heart for changes for the better. It's like, how much are you willing to put into making changes? It's having that bias for action. I think we talked about that in the beginning. Being willing to roll up your sleeves and just go at it.
Yeah, very cool. I love it. What within well, I mean, with all the different things that you've done, I mean, what are some memorable stories, like, problem solving things you've done, or any cool stories you kind of tell people in and around your career, or the various things you've been involved in?
Um, gosh, well, so back to elevators. My first ride on an elevator car top, I was only 6 years old. I have been in elevators all my life. But what I think is something that I would tell people, right? If you were to look at my resume, it makes absolutely no sense. So, having an entrepreneurial spirit and a willingness to do anything that comes your way comes at sometimes a very strange price. I've been hit up by recruiters to, maybe go work for a competitor. But they always asked about my resume, like, what's with your, if you look at my LinkedIn profile as an example, I did all of those things concurrently. And I don't suggest that for anybody, not just because it makes your resume confusing, but man, I look at all my white hair. So, just because you can does may not mean you should at the same time.
Yeah. So, and I know a lot of people that are entrepreneurial that kind of get it, but they maybe how do you kind of steer yourself in the right direction? What have you learned over the years that have helped you? Um, I don't know what's the right word. Even things out, align better. Like, have you learned anything that's helped you? Because obviously you're talking about the past and now, and I feel like you spent some time thinking about this. What have you learned that helps you sort of create alignment for yourself?
I think that you have to be true to yourself and stay completely authentic, um, and a tremendous amount of self-awareness in terms of what is important to you. Um, and then recognize that that can shift and change over time. And maybe that's why now I look at my resume as a little bit confusing. But there was a time when wearing multiple hats was what really, was exciting and really drove me, right? Um, but we all need a sense of purpose, and purpose comes with a little bit of focus. So, find out what that is that drives you, stay true and focus to that, um, and be authentic. And, we had talked once before about Chris Getkiss and how his authenticity that just comes right at you, right? Um, that is what got me to where I am now. But there's a point in time when that might need to, mellow out a little bit like a good wine. And like I say, find your focus, you'll find your purpose, and
Sure. For sure.
enjoy
So
life.
I have to ask the follow-up. What's important to you now?
Um, Thinking about legacy, what's that legacy that I can leave behind? What type of impact, um, you know, can I leave with others? In our interactions. I hope that people will say not just that she was authentic, but that she was a caring person or something like that. She was so generous with her smile, let's say. Anything, I don't know what it is, but I think about that. I think about legacy. What does that mean? I'll be coming up on 20 years soon with Mitsubishi Electric, and so what would that look like after I'm gone? Would someone be able to say, ah, yes, she helped me do this thing? So legacy.
For sure. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, but you wanted to share?
uh I don't think so. What I really wanted to know was about you, like how you started, how you got this, why, what's important to you about this podcast. But, I don't know.
I can answer some of them just related
Yeah.
to the podcast because I mean I don't bore you with the rest, or at least not on the episode. For me, the podcast originally just was a way to learn, right? And I thought, this has already been over 5 years, but just learn and grow. Be a better entrepreneur, know the industry better. But as you do a lot of episodes, it's kind of evolved into it's still learning, but more, doing a small part to try to disseminate information of different ideas. I think there's a lot of very, very smart people within the, buildings, construction, the elevators related to the buildings. And I know in some other industries, let's say like tech, there's a lot of information sharing that occurs, and it doesn't happen as much. And I think we could all benefit from that, though. So I learn, but at the same time, I hope others learn from the various people I get to talk to.
Well, perfect. I love it. So no, there's nothing else that you could say or do, but I appreciate what you do, and I understand it was International Podcast Day. I don't know, yesterday, a day before, or something like that. And to the pioneers like you, and to the people who want to share knowledge, thank you.